What do you think of Elon being the first trillionaire?
That part doesn't bother me. People think that like I criticize Elon because I'm like anti-trillionaires or something. I'm like some Bernie Sanders type of viewpoint. No, I'm not a socialist. This is like I think that entrepreneurs are what the people who are like solving the real problems in the world, and I don't think that is a problem in my perspective. The issues that I have with Elon is that he was already on this trajectory of becoming a trillionaire. And by the way, he's a trillionaire irrespective of his comp packages, both at Tesla and
Right.
at SpaceX, because those comp packages have not actually come to fruition. But the fact that someone who was on their way to become a trillionaire anyway, because they had motivation because of their existing ownership in these companies, asking for additional $1 trillion comp package at Tesla and another $1 trillion comp package at SpaceX, which is what he essentially has. That just seems excessive, right? Like no other founder in history has ever asked for those things, right? Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, like none of these guys have ever even taken like a tiny fraction of additional comp package or additional shares in general once they became billionaires, but certainly not anything egregious like this. So that's the part that bothers me about it, but not the fact that he's a trillionaire.
Yeah, I also have no issues with it. He built real companies with real
Right,
value, and the market is saying, whether the market's right or wrong, that his shares are worth $1 trillion. So,
right, right.
like, I think it's totally fine. Moreover, it gives me a little bit of hope. If there is an individual that could be worth $1 trillion, well, then I could be certainly worth $1 billion, right? That should be easy. So, I do like that.
That's
Um,
funny.
one
Oh,
one thing I
what? Well, let's move off. Like, but go ahead, go ahead.
okay, one thing I do want to also just note is technically, he's really not a trillionaire. Like, he's a trillionaire on paper, but if he ever wanted to sell
Sell
those
those shares.
shares, the
Right,
the share price would not remain at I forgot what the price was, like $200 for
right.
SpaceX. It would tank because there would be, too many shares on the market. So he can't plus it would give a lot of people a lack of confidence in those companies to necessarily buy the shares from him. So he
That's
can't sell
partially true. Yeah, I mean, like,
yeah,
he can't sell all the shares, that's for sure, right? Like, that's true also for, like, Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or whoever. Um, but, like, for example, he did sell $50 billion worth of shares in less than a couple of years of Tesla without Tesla's stock price getting impacted in any significant way. So, at some point, he might choose to take $100 billion off the table, and $100 billion
right.
is a lot. Like that's
It,
that.
it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a lot. I'm just saying, like, you hear a lot of negative commentary of like no one should really have $1 trillion, that you could
right,
do like too much. And like technically, yes, he has $1 trillion on paper, but he doesn't have access to the $1 trillion.
right, right.
And even if he didn't sell shares and he was just taking loans, off of
He'd have to pay those
using
back.
his shares as collateral, like yeah, you'd have to pay back. And also, no bank is going to lend you $1 trillion. So
Right.
like it's a good headline, and like yes, technically on paper it works out, but in reality it doesn't. So that's
The
just
criticism comes from a lot of people who don't understand how all of this stuff works, right? Like, so
right.
they're like they claim you don't pay any taxes relative to $1 trillion. You don't pay any taxes, but the reality is that he's also paid, over $10 billion in taxes that year that he sold like $50 billion worth of stock, right? So he's paid more taxes than the vast majority of people. I think there might be one or two people who are at the same level. Maybe Bill Gates, maybe Jeff Bezos, but not very many. Um, but yeah, absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think from a, this is getting way off topic, but from a taxation perspective, I think you could argue that maybe people could pay more taxes when they sell their shares, or that maybe based on the assets that they own, they're forced to sort of like pay 1% of taxes that they would have to pay if they were to sell it. If you were to sell it, you'd pay 20%. Maybe you pay 1% per year while you're holding on to it on just the gains, right? So something like that might be kind of interesting. But from a taxation perspective, I think there is some like validity from a tax perspective on how we could improve things. But most of the criticism just comes from like, if you have $1 trillion, why don't you just solve homelessness or whatever? It's like, dude, you can't spend $1 trillion. and then like that, if that would have already happened at the $1 billion mark, which is what all the criticism used to be at the $1 billion level, well, then we wouldn't have any of this wealth to be able to tax all these rich people so that we could pay for stuff. So anyway, getting off the soapbox of taxes for a moment, we can move on to other topics.
Okay,
but if people are interested, by the way, like there's a lot of tax related topics that we could talk about that might be kind of interesting. But
oh yeah, no joke, I love talking about taxes. I just think it's fascinating. So we could definitely do that.
Because I do think we have an unfair tax system, by the way, but that's for another day.